I tested every ranged DPS on the beta of the War Within, and here are some of the specs I had the most fun with, alongside some that need some help. I want to make it clear that yes, although doing a lot of DPS can be a lot of fun, this video is going to be ranking these specs on how fun their rotation is. To kick things off then, we're going to start with the Arcane Mage. I have literally never had more fun in this game than playing Arcane in its current state, mostly thanks to the talent reworks. Firing out a slew of Arcane Orbs is the coolest feeling in the game, and it's thanks to talents like Orb Barrage, granting you a chance to fire them out for free whenever you fire an Arcane Barrage. Another big offender in launching out these constant orbs is the Spellfrost Teachings talent you learn with Spellslinger. Any direct damage you deal with a Splinter has a 2% chance to fire out an Arcane Orb for free and increase the damage. These are literally proccing all the time, sometimes even mid-cast, and it just smooths out the AoE rotation completely as it generates constant arcane charges for you to dump with Arcane Barrages, which again then has a chance to fire out another Arcane Orb. It's just ridiculous. As if you weren't already generating enough passive Arcane charges, Arcane's tier set for Season 1 gives a chance to cause your next Arcane Barrage to generate another 4 Arcane charges, basically giving you a full refund when you press your Arcane Barrage. The Arcane charge generation is out of this world for Arcane, making you pretty much fully mobile, and it's responsible for some of the most fun I've ever had in this game. In between all of this madness, with the talent Arcane Harmony, the base idea is to try and fire out as many Arcane Missiles as you can in between each Arcane Barrage to increase the damage of the barrage by up to 100%. Now this may sound complicated, but Arcane Missiles is now only usable when you have a clear casting proc, so you just use these procs in between every barrage. Every 4 Arcane Missiles you fire will also cast Arcane Missiles at up to 4 nearby enemies, stacking up your Harmony buff with 1 cast, and also, if talented into High Voltage, this pretty much guarantees you to proc 4 Arcane charges. Not to mention how insanely cool this looks when you just bombard 5 targets with Arcane Missiles. With the overhaul in the War Within, this spec has become a lot easier while still being more enjoyable than ever. They've reduced the button bloat with talents like Magi Spark, baking your old Radiant Spark into your Touch of the Magi, that when placed on the target just erupts them in purple magic, making for some of the best visual feedback in the game. I literally cannot rave about this spec enough. Blizzard have smashed it, and I'd recommend you all to try it out. While we're on the topic of Mage, we may as well cover Fire Mage. Similarly to Arcane, I haven't enjoyed Fire that much in recent expansions, but with the reworks in the War Within, that changes. Firstly, I love Living Bomb, and the fact that it is such a big part of the talent tree for AoE is a major W in my eyes. Starting out your rotation by applying all of these living bombs that just erupts the world in front of you, and then applies even more living bombs to chain this reaction, is perfect for Fire Mage and embodies the class fantasy completely. But it's not just about the visuals for me. Having this constant burst damage throughout your rotation bridges the gap between your combustion windows, which was always my problem with Fire. I hated how cooldown reliant I felt, and that if I pressed my combustion at the wrong time, my damage was just screwed for the rest of the fight, or even dungeon. We can now actually do some respectable damage outside of our combust, so we don't only feel useful inside our major cooldown. Adding to this more consistent damage profile, with Frostfire Mage, our Fireball is replaced by Frostfire Bolt, and through our rotation, we have a good chance to make the spell instant and explode upon impact. Not only does this do great damage itself, as well as grant us maximum benefits of Frostfire Mastery, it most notably generates us more hot streaks, so we can chain more instant pyros, which means for one, we get back into our combustion quicker thanks to our kindling talent, but also with Sun King's Blessing, we can enter combustion even more frequently than ever before. Sun Fury is also super sick. Bombarding your targets with smaller meteorites consistently through your rotation is awesome, and being able to literally just spam Pyroblast when your Phoenix expires is an absolute treat. Fire Mage is really smoothed out in the new expansion and doesn't feel anywhere near as punishing as it was before, though it does still allow for the better Fire Mages to keep their flair. On to some different classes then. The next of my favourites for the War Within is the Marksmanship Hunter. Hunter recently had a massive overhaul which was long overdue, and they absolutely crushed it for marksmanship. Massive changes to the class tree for Hunters brought great defensive buffs to the class, giving us access to 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest, as well as even removing poisons or diseases from us when we feign death. This is amazing for Hunters, as defensives were something we greatly lacked, sometimes even preventing us from clearing harder content. We also finally got a reliable AoE stop in Implosion Trap, knocking up all enemies hit by the trap. But let's talk about marksmanship specifically. The biggest win for me is the addition of Barrage into the spec tree, which is cool enough by itself, but Blizzard cooked even more and we can now turn this into a rapid fire barrage, shooting up to 5 rapid fires that can all trick shot as well. Pressing this button is easily the highlight of your rotation. It feels like double tap on steroids for you OG MM hunters out there. Just please make sure that you misdirect before you press this button. Another favorite of mine is that lock and load is now so easy to get to in the talent tree. This gives our auto attacks a chance to make our next aim shot completely free and instant cast. I love this talent. It's always been a favorite of mine, and I'm sure many other hunters share the same opinion. Getting near enough back-to-back procs of this, especially in Cleave, gives a huge dopamine hit. I love abilities or talents like this that add an unpredictability to your rotation, but at the same time isn't class or damage defining. Blizzard also separated calling the shots and unerring vision, so now not only do we have a super beefy true shot window, we can now also massively reduce the cooldown of our true shot, getting it down to near enough a minute cooldown already at the start of the expansion, especially when playing Sentinel Marksman. Getting cooldown reduction on one of your main cooldowns is one of my favorite gameplay mechanics, especially because it rewards players with good gameplay. The final of my favorites for ranged DPS is the Demonology Warlock. Demo for the most part still plays pretty much the same as before, which I was already a huge fan of as it feels much more mobile than the other lock specs. Being able to move while spamming demon bolts with demonic core procs means you can consistently keep DPSing while being mobile. But the biggest thing is this spec perfectly embodies its class fantasy by summoning an army of the Burning Legion. Whether it's imps, felguards, tyrants, or even now being able to summon a literal raid boss as your own pet every 30 seconds. The War Within introduced Antoran Charhounds into Demo's talents to replace Wild Fiend, modelled after the raid bosses from Antorus. These hounds look unbelievably sick, and to have frequent control over them to deal your damage is the perfect addition to what was already a superb fantasy. But that's not where it ends. With the introduction of the Diabolist hero talents, you can now summon even more powerful demons to your aid every time a diabolic ritual ends. You'll see glimpses of Overlords, Mothers of Chaos, or Pit Lords through your rotation, something a Demonology Warlock of the past could only dream of. These lieutenants even change up your gameplay slightly by generating you more soul shards or even calling down a ruination to nuke all mobs within its impact. And this will also summon you another imp that you can then use on everyone's favorite ability, Implosion, drawing all imps to your target's location and blowing them all up for incredible burst. Dealing damage by commanding a total of up to 10 different demons is some of the coolest gameplay in World of Warcraft. So those were some of the winners. Now let's move on to some of the losers. First, I want to start off with the Balance Druid, and this is coming from someone that's mained balance for a good part of my WoW career. The Moonkin, in my opinion, really feels like it's been left behind in Dragonflight. Even with the talent changes, nothing of significance has really been added and the Boomy just feels kinda stale. Balance's rotation is 100% predictable, and although yes, I do think it's good for the game to have differences in gameplay styles between the classes, I feel like a proc for balance would go a long way in terms of fun, especially with the removal of Primordial Arcanic Pulsar. Removing this talent was a huge L from Blizzard, and I'm really not sure why they did it. Gaining access frequently to a shortened version of your cooldown was really enjoyable and rewarded better gameplay, and without it, Balance's rotation just feels bland, to be honest. Your dots automatically refresh themselves whenever you press Starfall, so they are completely set and forget. You lost a super fun tier set from Dragonflight where you get a free spender upon entering an eclipse, and in between all that, you're just building and dumping astral power, and unfortunately for Moonkins, the hero talents don't even fix any of this. Keeper of the Grove featured in my worst of the hero talents video, as they require you to take the Treant's talent, and then they aren't even powerful, they have no impact on your gameplay, and you can only use them every 45 seconds. Instead, all of your damage comes from a random dream burst of AoE, which no one cares for. We could have our Treants applying a third dot to our targets to proc Waning Twilight on them, or we could simply have them active almost all the time at the cost of their taunt. And Elune Chosen isn't even that much better, contrary to how sick the name and theme of this hero talent is. I like the idea of what they were going for with this, but the execution isn't there yet. Fury of Elune should almost constantly be rolling in my opinion. The AP generation alone would make this an absolute blast to play with due to how many spenders you could dump out. But to take it a step even further, allow us to proc multiple Furies constantly and just watch them all follow different mobs and blow up at the end. This would be visually so sick, and then you can just tone the numbers back. Though I am a fan of looking at my damage meter in Cleave and seeing Fury of Elune quite high. And finally, the last ranged DPS that isn't too fun to play right now is my old main, the Beast Mastery Hunter. Now, I was a bit hesitant to put this spec in here, as I do think it's completely fine and probably even good for Blizzard to keep some easier and more simple classes in the game for people that want to kick back and chill. But that doesn't mean that they have to be boring. The visuals are just lacking for BM. It is a tough one, and I do get it. Hunters are a tricky class to make visually appealing, but with Beast Mastery, I feel like there's still some room for Blizzard to make the pets look cooler. I had an idea where BM's tree could be split into summoning more and more pets and taking down your enemies with an absolute zoo, or on the other side, focusing all of your power into a singular pet, making it turbo strong and make it look badass. This doesn't even have to be done through talents or power though. They could literally just make Bestial Wrath more visually appealing so that we can actually see it while we're stood 40 yards away. That is the biggest problem with BM right now for me. You stood at range and all you're doing is pointing at your pet or shooting, and you don't see anything else because your pet's in amongst the ruckus. Make it so that only on the BM screen the pet becomes enormous and savage, because we really don't need to see what's going on inside melee, as we won't be dodging any frontals or mechanics in there. Seeing your pet towering over all of the mobs and cleaving them down would be unreal. Barring that though, even post rework there's still problems with the tree. We're still dumping 4 points to barely even beef up our main cooldown, when it should all just be passively built into Bestial Wrath anyway. There's also so many points that are just boring and passive, but they're very strong, so we have to take them. Piercing Fangs being the main offender. It's too good not to take, but if we could avoid it, then we could play Call of the Wild with our fancy new Bloodshed talents. Now, I could look past all of this if the hero talents propped up the spec, but in fact they're so lame they do the opposite. Pack Leader is probably the worst hero talent in the game. It's so passive you literally question if you even have hero talents enabled, and Dark Ranger isn't any better. For whatever reason, we get procs of Barb Shot. We already generate and sustain our frenzy too easily, we barely even take Wild Call anymore. So why the hell would Blizzard think it's a good idea to give us even more charges of this ability from our hero talent? It is truly bizarre. I don't necessarily think Beast Mastery itself needs to change too much. I can accept that maybe the spec just isn't for me anymore and that other people do enjoy it, but ain't no way that people are enjoying any of these hero talents for Hunter, so Blizzard needs to fix up. But that's it. Those are some of my favorite of the ranged DPS as of right now, alongside some of the ranged DPS that definitely still need some love. If you guys did enjoy this video, then please feel free to drop a like down below, subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.